sometimes when you're traveling, there's always that one instance where you'll, unfortunately forget something important. At least today, I only forgot my mic stand, so I could still record this and hope for the best that it won't suck at post because, vibrations. Regardless, the show must go on, and today the show will be talking about the Kiwi Ears Belle. Now, this is the latest budget IEM by Kiwi Ears, and it sits at a comfortable $30. Kiwi Ears has sent this our way, so we will be giving them an honest review on how these actually perform. But before we get into that, quick unboxing experience. Now, unlike the other models that I have previously reviewed, this one, definitely from this price point, you'll definitely see the packaging has been compromised a little bit. Even for its sleeve, it still maintains the same design language, which I personally applaud. But as you open this up, there will be no secondary box, kind of like opening up a phone box. It just shows you the models directly. Opening up the bottom compartment, you will be greeted with a set of tips and, more importantly, its cable, which I really just want to take a second to comment and applaud Kiwi Ears. Like, for this price point, it's honestly very hard to find, IEMs with decent feeling and, decent quality cables. Like, they definitely put a lot of budget on the cable as well. So thank you, Kiwi Ears, for that. The Kiwi Ears Belle is made with two types of materials for its head shells, high quality resin, as well as a CNC metal faceplate, which the model that I have right now is in a silvery, glittery type of design. But should you say you don't like a more brighter looking IEM, y'all can always get its other colorway, which is in black. And in terms of how does this thing fit, personally, I really like the fact that first of all, it's extremely light, but second of all, more importantly, a lot of people have small ears. So with this being a smaller shell, it will definitely solve a lot of problems for people who cannot fit bigger size head shells. But that also poses another problem where for me, I have bigger ears. This thing fits well, but I definitely need to kind of jiggle a bit to make it fit perfectly. But personally, I have tested it on the SpinFit Omnis, which is basically my go-to choice for ear tips. That fits perfectly, which I really appreciate. So for people who want to use this as is, just using stock, it will be good. But definitely use your own tips. It'll be even more amazing in terms of the seal and the weight distribution and fit. Okay, so we've covered everything. Now comes the most important part of the video. How does the Kiwi Ears Belle actually sound? Now, the Kiwi Ears Belle is a $30 set, so we will assume it to be within that price point. But I'm glad to say, spoiler alert throughout this whole video, its performance is more closer to what a $50 IEM would usually do. I'll talk a little bit more later, but generally this thing is a V-shaped IEM with a slightly warm-ish tinge. Now, initially when you're listening to this without any burn-in, it will definitely sound warmer, but definitely, this is a very important key. This IEM definitely needs to be burned in because initially when I listened to this, which is a single DD-DLC diaphragm IEM, I forgot to mention that. Initially when I'm listening to this, there's definitely some levels of distortion in the mid-range and some levels of incoherencies and dynamicness here and there. So I literally just left it playing for like around 10 hours, and after that it starts to go to the point where it's negligible. So definitely remember to burn in your IEMs before listening to this. But okay, burning times aside, the overall tuning of this set, even though it is a V-shape, I personally would say that it is more of a mature type of V-shape, where you don't want things to get too much, but it still gives you the type of, V-shape tuning that you want to. You want things to be fun, but you want things to be fun and mature. And this set is that particular set. Starting off the bass as usual, the sub bass overall is quite rumbly and it provides a good foundation for, your general lift and track. So it has sub bass, but not extremely much. It definitely rumbles when it needs to, but doesn't go overboard. And personally, I feel like the lower bass are the more stronger points of this IEM because overall it gives you a very good amount of dynamicness and it allows to go very, very deep. Mid bass also has some good amount of response. It has some good amount of speed, but overall sometimes when the mix is not that good, it might sound a little bit too bloaty. And again, like I said, it's a matured set. So with that being said in mind, definitely expect this pair to have bass definitions that is more leveled. It is more balanced in terms of the texture and the girth, rather than something that is extremely, I would say, crunchy, extremely uncompressed, very unfiltered. 808s, kicks, all of these provide very good amounts of dynamics and also give you some very good bounce, and after every single hit it will have very good levels of diffusion. But I do realize that this thing is definitely a faster set because every decay, every overtone that I'm listening to is faster than usual. It does have that airiness, but just, you know, it goes away very quickly. Moving on to vocals, even though this is a V-shaped set, personally I feel like the positioning of the vocals is already quite forward in the context of V-shaped tuning IEMs. And in this setting particularly, honestly handles vocals quite well, giving it a good amount of note weight, a good amount of body, which I think for most sets in this price point, you can't really find that kind of bodiness. And the timbre overall is probably the only part where I feel like it's a little bit swaying away from the mature side of tuning. Either that or you can interpret it in another way, because I feel like even though it is quite natural, it has a more, I would say, coarse and raw type of texture that you're listening to. Like you can hear, you know, the throat sounds of the vocalist. One more important thing I want to highlight is in between male and female vocals. Female vocals personally I feel like could shine more in this set, mainly because it gives body and it gives more assertion, it gives more of a stronger presence to the listener. And last but not least, no instance of sibilance, which is nice. Now moving on to instruments, like I said initially, you definitely need to burn this thing in, because without burning, there's definitely incoherencies and distortions here and there. But after that, nothing has any more distortion, or at least very, very negligible to the point where you won't really notice it anymore. Unless I'm listening to extremely heavy tracks like Stellar, nothing else really pushes it to the point where it starts to get distorted. And overall, I would say the experiences of the mid-range is, you know, it's simple, it's easily digestible, and it definitely is sufficient enough in terms of its detail retrieval to keep me consistently engaged. And like I said, this is a $30 set, but I can kind of confidently say that if Kiwi Ears were to sell this for $50, people will probably not bat an eye as well. Overall, very good representation of all the instruments. Specifically, I would say pianos overall are more smoothened out, but still gives a good amount of engagement and dynamicness. Strings, in my personal opinion, are on the more firmer, the more rigid side, but with that quick extension, like I said, in the 808s part, it also carries into this place as well. Every decay, every single overtone is there, but it is quick and fast. And last but not least, vocal ensembles, which I think I'll probably nag about it a little bit. This is quite performing for the set, and it gives more of a more, I would say, coherent feeling rather than something that's a little bit more muddy. Because with this set, you know, sometimes when you're listening to details, and vocal ensembles are the more common ones, sometimes they mostly just appear in your 10 and 2 o'clock, and all of the other overtones, everything starts to radiate from two separate points. Some other sets definitely do not do that. You can kind of pinpoint that they are at your side, but it overall kind of, you know, muddies up all together, jumbling up all together throughout your whole, you know, sonic feel. This thing overall is still quite good in that area, but I personally feel like it's more of a personal taste. Do you want your vocal ensembles to sound exactly like how they want to mix it, which is two separate places, or do you want it to be a little bit more jumbled up? And moving on to upper mids and treble, for this set, for a V-shaped tuning, I like the fact that this thing is still giving me energeticness, but overall has a more smoothened out feeling, which I would usually associate more to be, you know, slightly more mature. Now, positioning of the upper mids and treble will be definitely slightly behind the bass, which I'll make this very clear. This doesn't mean that this thing has bass bleed, but despite that, they don't really do that in the context where, you know, it sounds more laid back, rather than the fact that I feel like it's just a way for you to curb that, you know, you can have a lot of energy, but you don't feel like it's too much energy where splashiness and heatiness, you know, kinda comes out. And with that being said, very good amount of energy, but it doesn't have that heatiness, it doesn't have that sense of fatigueness, which I particularly like. And among all of the other things that I want to say, instruments, micro details are all giving you some very good levels of sparkliness as well in this area. Now moving on to technicalities, I just want to highlight a few things right here, right now. Dynamics, I quite like this because on low volumes, I feel like it sways more to be balanced, and on normal volumes, it's your typical V-shaped tuning. So, you know, as a guy that listens daily and also listens to stuff when he sleeps, I like it when the fact that this thing suddenly becomes more balanced as I am going to sleep. But definitely one very big caveat, as with all the IEMs in this price point, expect some levels of distortion on very, very heavy tracks. Like I said, Stellar, my go-to test track for, you know, abusing its driver capabilities. Now moving on to soundstage, I think it really does the job quite well, but in terms of what I want to highlight, not really anything in particular. So, you know, it's good, but nothing exceptional for $30 US. But what I would personally say it's more exceptional for $30 US is its imaging and separation. This set definitely does it well, where I can listen to things and I know things in the tracks from one to the other. And also with the fact that I keep mentioning that it's a more matured V-shape tuning, this definitely also implies that it is more technical and more analytical. There's no instances of muddiness, there's no instances of, like, you know, ambiguity when you're listening to things, despite the average type of soundstage that you're getting. So, you know, with that limitation, they still kind of perform extremely well in this situation. And last but not least, detail retrieval, which I personally feel like is also, again, one of the strong suits of this IEM. Overall, definitely gives quite a good amount of details to pop out throughout. And, you know, presentation of this whole IEM is definitely leaning towards giving a more quick, a more fast, a more concise hits of, you know, engagements throughout, which I personally quite appreciate. So with all that being said, let's just wrap this up. How do I think about the Kiwi ears Belle, and how does it sit with everything else? For $30 US, I think it definitely can be priced more if Kiwi ear wants it to, because definitely this thing at least gives you a more mature presentation in terms of its dynamicness, in terms of its imaging, in terms of its detail retrieval, and especially the vocals. I don't know why, but Kiwi ears definitely has nailed this particular set on the vocals, which I think is quite hard for most sets in this price point. Most of them just sound either veiled or hollow or thin specifically, and specifically for hollowness. They will definitely give you body, but it comes in the form where it has a very weird boxy hollow type of sound. This thing does not have that, which I really want to highlight. Definitely quite a more versatile type of tuning, which I think for most genres, I think you will definitely benefit from it. Personally tested hip-hop, tested ambient, tested pop, tested acoustics. Everything sounds good. So I guess that's it for my video. Thank you for watching. And for people who are interested in getting the Kiwi ears Belle, as always, links down in the description below. Y'all can also look at the ASMR video that I usually post. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, especially comment, man. Just comment down below. We can have a very good chat. I like to interact with everybody. And, you know, with that being said, thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video. Have a great day.